But you have a bad habit of leaving stuff in that I'm like, please take it out, take it out. So there was one episode we started and it was, so all I've eaten today is donuts. I've eaten ring donuts, chocolate donuts, mini donuts, and you were just sat there like, this is great.
It was an episode on what it's like being a working people, and I couldn't think of anything more descriptive than all I've eaten is donuts today.
And my brother seems to be like our number one fan, so he sent me a text being like, how many donuts was it? With how many like numbers? And I was like, oh my god.
I love that.
Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of the Pony Podcast. Today we've come down to Bristol to have a chat with Ella Bunting, who's the current under-21 national endurance champion. Thank you very much for agreeing to this interview.
Yeah, that's all right.
We're very excited, and I don't know anything about this sport apart from the last episode that we did, which was my first introduction to it. So
It's a good start.
if I sound like an idiot, it's because I am, but also because
Hoping we can get some expert tips on endurance and some good real life stories.
Were you in the pony club, and if so, which branch?
Yeah, I was when I was much younger. So I started riding when I was about 3, and then I probably stopped pony club when I was about 11-ish. I was with Avonvale.
Okay. What made you
Pony club.
stop? Just because you wanted to focus on endurance?
No, just because when I was little, I had pony club ponies, and then I grew up on a farm, and I had to move off the farm in the same year that my pony died, and so I didn't ride for a little bit, and so it just happened to be that I sort of stopped because the pony stopped, and then
So what did you learn in pony club that you've kept with you?
I think probably one of the most memorable things I learned was I can remember I always had really sharp ponies when I was little, and one of them, he was called Sausage, bless him. And
That's a good name, I like that.
He'd just get so excited at jumping, and I can remember I fell off at pony club and then was obviously really upset, as little kids are, afterwards. And the instructor told me to sing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star to make sure that my breathing was like all relaxed and everything else calmed down as well. And I don't stick to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, but still, if I find anything getting a bit too tense, I start singing.
That's so smart.
That's really good. I like that.
That's such a good tip.
So how did you go from sort of bit of pony club and not having pony? How did you get involved in endurance?
So a family friend called Janet, she lives almost on the farm that I grew up on, has competed in endurance for years, and she was on sort of the British team and things.
Good person to know.
A very good person to know, yeah. And when I was about 13, she got a mare on loan called Ebba. And the initial plan was that she was on loan for a year to do her first season of endurance because her owner was moving out to Australia. And then after that year, it was either going to be that Ebba went out to Australia with her owner, or her owner came back, or sort of just rejig the plan. And after sort of a few weeks of Janet having her, she decided that she was probably a bit tall for her. And so I started joining in with her training because she had another endurance horse as well. So she said if I wanted to join in with her training, I could ride Ebba. And I basically stole her from there. And then we went. I obviously I started as a novice at the same time as Ebba started as a novice. Together we went from novice to 2-star in endurance over 6 seasons.
What is 2-star level for endurance?
So 2-star level is 120k in a single day.
Wow. And is that a competitive ride, so you race, or is that done on the performance?
So that's FEI things are races.
Okay.
So you initially start and you can only do graded rides. So that's just done on the overall speed you do and your horse's heart rate at the end. And then by the time you get to 80k and you're qualified enough, you can start either just national races, which are called CERs, or FEI, which is races.
Which do you prefer doing?
FEI, I think, just because
Really?
there's more of a buzz about it, and they tend to be, FEI tends to be at the bigger venues, so it's
Do you
just
literally,
exciting in general.
Do you all start together and then just
You can
vaguely go as fast as you can?
Well, you can all start in a mass start. I think the biggest mass start I've done was probably a group of 7.
Yeah. Okay.
it wasn't manic or anything, but quite often, like most of the ones I did last year, I'd wait until the big group of people who were sort of in it to win it went out, and then I'd poodle out seconds after them and be nice and steady.
Yeah. That's so nice. When you look for an endurance horse, what qualities do you look for?
I mean, I've never really had to look for one, because I sort of stole Ebba from Janet, and then Rocky was sort of just a find, accidental really, but pretty much that they're sound.
Yeah.
And
4 legs, great.
Yeah, and I mean, it does tend to be Arabs or Arab crosses, but I've seen all sorts at endurance rides. There's a Suffolk punch that comes out and does
Really?
32k rides, which is amazing. But yeah, just that they're really sound and that they're not too hot-headed.
What is it about Arabs that make them the more popular endurance horse?
I think that they're sort of bred for it anyway. They're bred for going across the desert for miles and miles. But because they don't hold, well, they don't tend to anyway. Rocky's looking kind of chunky at the moment. They don't tend to hold too much weight, because the more weight they hold, then the harder it is to cool them down to get their heart rate down.
Yeah.
So the horse that Janet used to compete on was actually an Appaloosa, and she was big and big boned and had a lot of muscle on her. She was really solid. So it used to take a lot more effort, like pouring on a lot more water onto her when I was competing with Janet than it did with Ebba, the Arab, who should have like a sponge down her neck, and then she'd be like, oh dear, a bit cold now.
Yeah, because the pony I did endurance on, he was a Welsh Arab cross.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And he was pretty good at cooling himself down.
Yeah.
He sort of knew what was going on, and he was like, right, it's cooling down time.
Yeah.
Gonna.
Sure, no. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rocky's really good at that. He sort of knows the second you come over the line for your vet check and everything, he sort of chills out and
That's so good.
drops, which is
Not like
perfect.
eventers that have to be taken away from the 10-minute pause to calm down, because they're still like, oh my god.
The adrenaline's still going.
No, Ebba used to be a bit like that.
What do you do fitness-wise for your horses, and how do you think it? Well, you obviously know, but how does it differ from other horses? Say an event horse or.
So, initially, when you're first bringing them into endurance, I have to put a lot of effort in. Like when I first got Rocky, I had to do a lot, and when I first got Ebba, I had to do a lot. But mainly starting with sort of longer, slower hacks, basically, and making sure they do enough road work that they don't then get to road work at an endurance ride and
Break.
yeah, basically, yeah. And then once they're at the higher levels, they tend to keep their fitness really well.
Okay.
Like this year, I started Rocky on an 80k race as our first competition, and I've never done that distance that early on in the season before. But because I knew he was well fit enough to be doing 120k's at the end of last season, and he sort of had a few months to chill in the field, I sort of took him one step back and decided that we'd give it a go.
So similar to how you would eventing, like you'd start with a lower
Yeah,
level and then
and sort of probably longer and slower initially, and now Rocky won't do too much really long steady rides, but I occasionally take him to the gallops, and I'll set myself a speed. So last time I said I wanted to do 15k at 16k per hour, and so sort of go there, and I use Endomondo on my phone and stuff, so you can sort of track yourself as you're going around. And now Rocky, I'm focusing at the moment on quite a lot of schooling with him, because I want to build his top line a bit more, and he has a tendency to get a sore back, which we've been managing really well. But I think if I can get more school work into him, then that shouldn't be an issue.
How do you work on your own fitness for it?
I tell myself that I go to the gym.
Let's all laugh together.
Which I do sometimes get into when I'm at uni. It's really good that I've got quite a few housemates that go to the gym, so they motivate me while I'm here.
Peer pressure, it's great.
And lacking riding. But I still do quite a lot of riding while I'm at uni, because it's not too far, so I tend to go home and ride a lot. Although I've noticed it a lot more since I've been at uni. I've noticed how much more I ache after a proper endurance ride.
I did the exact same after when I was at uni.
Whereas I used to, I think because with Ebba I built my fitness up as I was building her up.
Yeah.
And then,
Hasn't happened.
it hasn't really happened now.
So when you do endurance rides, and you're saying you don't start with the group, it sometimes can require you to do a lot of riding on your own. Do you tend to find a buddy to pair up with, or do you just go and hope you don't get lost?
Yeah, so with Ebba, she doesn't actually compete anymore. But with Ebba, I used to much prefer being by myself because she hated anyone behind her, and I used to go around with a red ribbon in her tail, not really because I was worried about her kicking anyone, but because she'd start
Keep
bucking
everyone
if someone
away.
started coming up behind me.
My Freddie was the same, but he would race to someone in the distance.
Yeah.
So if there was
yeah,
someone
yeah.
ahead, he would suddenly be like, I've got to catch him up, got to
They
catch him
like
up.
tag onto them and they're like, that's my aim. No, so with Ebba I used to almost prefer going by myself.
Yeah.
But with Rocky, he loses interest really quickly if he's by himself. So pretty much the whole of last season, I paired up with a girl called Katie Bedwin, who is absolutely lovely, and we're really, really good friends now. But that
Good if she's listening.
that started with the first 2-star that I tried to do on Rocky last year. Ended up being in that crazy heat wave we had, and both of us, I think we spoke on Facebook beforehand, and we were both like, I just want to get round. I don't want to race it. I don't care where we come.
Yeah.
I just want to
Make it.
Yeah. And I think we'd be bonkers to try and properly race it in this heat.
Yeah.
And we actually ended up being the only 2 that got round that day, and so we came first and second in the National Young Rider Championship.
Wow.
Whereas we'd spent the whole day just mooching around together, like, yeah, we just want to get round. This is lovely. And then, and obviously we didn't know when we crossed the line because there had been other people in it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really cool.
Oh,
And
that's
then
so nice.
because the horses got on so well and we were doing the same things, we ended up riding together loads last year and sort of crossing the finish line hand in hand because by the time you've ridden 120k together, you don't care who crosses the
It's such a long time to be in the saddle for. Do you find it's quite like a mental game to stay focused
Yeah,
and stay
definitely.
on
Because
speed?
the last 2-star I did on Rocky 3 weeks ago now, that Katie and her boyfriend were riding together, and they were riding horses that had never done 120 before. So we did the first 2 or 3 loops together.
Oh, what happened
and
to
then-
mates before dates?
How does she find a horsey boyfriend?
That's the real question.
And then I sort of went off in front of them a bit, and that was quite hard because I knew there were people in front of me, but I didn't know how far ahead.
Yeah.
And Rocky, the second there's no other horses about, he's just like,
Nah.
this isn't really fun anymore. I'm not sure I want to do this. So I end up going along, as I say, I end up going along like singing to myself and
Yeah. Slowly going
sort
insane.
of chatting utter rubbish to them. But that's where I find having a crew like coming around with you and giving you like slush bottles and jelly babies.
Snacks.
Snacks. Really, really good because Rocky loves them like just as much as I do. He's in love with my mum. Completely in love with my mum. So he sort of, the second he sees them or he sees the cars in the distance, he's like, right, okay, yeah, let's get
Snacks.
going. Like, it's all good. And that gives him a real pick-me-up.
Yeah.
And for like quite a while after that, he'll be happy as Larry.
Yeah.
Which is your favourite ride that you've been to or in the country?
It's got to be Red Dragon because there's a lot of like Euston Park and King's Forest are big venues and they're really fun to race at, but Red Dragon is like every year it is my aim to finish on because it's pretty much the last endurance ride of the season, and every year so far I've like upped to level. So with Ebba I started there and did, I think the first year we did 40k each day. And she ended up like winning her class and won my first endurance bridle and stuff. And so it's like it's become a really special ride for me, I think, because every year it's been like a big step up.
Do you have like for the internationals and for like the last event of the season? Do you have like a big party? Because we have for eventing one of the last events of the season. You have like a big party on the Saturday night. And
No, we don't have. There's quite often a party at one of the big Euston Park rides.
Okay.
But the main endurance party is the AGM sort of thing. So that's the
I feel like
main one.
that's the good one.
I feel like as well, eventing has more horse boxes that people can party in, whereas endurance you're more in trailers and tents because we're going. And I think a party in a tent is maybe not quite as
Probably not as
fun.
Have you ever been to a festival?
Well,
That's a good point actually. That's a very good point. So this is a little bit of a deeper question. That endurance seems to have had a bit of bad press recently, especially after WEG and some of the rides that happen in the Middle East. What do you think do you have any ideas what we could do to change public perception?
I think social media's got to play like a massive part in it.
Yeah.
Because like most of our young riders have our own endurance pages for our riding, but obviously it's how to get enough people to like them so enough people see. But no, I think that's got to play a massive part in it, because everyone, like, I see so many posts on like endurance pages on Facebook of people saying awful things, and actually if you look deeper into it, it's normally not in this country.
There are enough of you not doing awful things.
Yeah, like my pony is so spoiled. My mum is absolutely besotted with him. He gets hand fed. She's there with a knife for endurance rides, so he doesn't even have to bite his own apple. Like hand feeding him bits. So you just think, I think we need to just try and put as much of that on as possible. So I try on my endurance page to put like not just about our competitions, but like Rocky is a massive one for pulling ridiculous faces. My mum, bless her, seems to always manage to catch it on camera. So that's
because she stands there like a proud grandparent with a camera ready.
She loves it. But there's like a load of mug shots of Rocky on my endurance page, basically trying to show that, like, because in this country it tends to be people's pets. Like, no one really has enough money competing in endurance in England
to have enough horses to fill an Instagram page.
Exactly. But also, it just tends to be someone's one pet that they're in love with, and they just happen to compete.
If I do move down to Nix and my dog comes, that's what our page is going to be. Just my dog.
Your dog.
It's going to become the dog podcast.
Yeah. I mean, it's already my horse, because we get stuck for a photo, and I'll be like, oh God, what can I take a photo of? Piglet. Let's go. Let's do this.
I think it's also that you were saying with when you won the Young Riders, that you just went to get round. You weren't racing, and at the end of the day, you've got to put the welfare of your horse first.
Yeah, because we knew it was so hot that day, so
it's paid off.
Yeah.
And it's the sort of sport where that can happen, like.
Exactly, because I think quite a lot of the time, if you say, "Oh, I did an endurance race," people assumed that you actually raced it. Whereas I very rarely actually have sort of a very competitive attitude, and I don't think I've ever started a ride and been like, yeah, I'm going to win this.
And at the end of the day, it's about having the sound horse at the end, rather
that
than
means more
doing
to me
speed.
Than wherever I come. I don't.
So this is a question we like to ask everyone if we can. So what's one thing you wish you'd learned sooner?
Probably to not get tense, like sort of like how easily horses pick up on your own moods. Me and my mum were talking about it today, because obviously when I got Ebba I was 13, so Ebba is an incredibly opinionated mare, and I was probably quite a stroppy teenager, but
just someone nodding in the background.
And I probably didn't realise it at the time how much that if I was in a bad mood she'd react.
Pick up on it.
And I know it, like, I've had to really learn it with Rocky, especially with his schooling, because he's not the biggest fan. And I haven't done enough to know, like, to be able to just go in and be like, right, today we're doing bish bash bosh, like, this is how you do it. And so if I go in and we have a bit of communication error and he starts getting arsey with me and then I start getting annoyed with him, it just goes really, really badly. Whereas if I think when I was like 13, if I'd have realised that actually horses pick up on your mood like straight away, if you just chill out, things tend to go a lot smoother. It's like we used to have like group endurance like flat work lessons over the winter when everyone was just ticking over, and I can remember Ebba was awful at schooling. She was always awful at schooling. She just didn't want to do it, and we were having trouble getting her to canter because we'd got her when she could basically just like walk and trot and mooch about, but she hadn't really done a lot. And the girl, it was quite a young girl doing the lesson, and she was like, I think I ended up in tears because she was trying to get me to canter and it wasn't happening, and I didn't really want it to happen because I had no need for it to happen. I was like, she can canter when she wants to. Like, I don't need to force her into cantering in the school. And she was like, right, get off and I'll get on. And I can just remember being stood there like, please don't do it for her, please don't do it for her, that would be so embarrassing. And this girl eventually got about 3 strides of canter out and came off like bright red in the face and like gave her back to me like, yeah, okay.
Take it.
I was just there like,
I had that moment with my horse so Nick got on, I work for Nick Gauntlet, everyone on the podcast knows, but I'm not sure. And so my horse having problems with my horse's canter for jumping, and he was like, I want to have a sit on her and just feel. And so he got on her, was doing really nice canter, and he was popping a few fences, and he was sort of chatting to me and vaguely aiming her at a fence. And my horse was like, you're not concentrating, went round it. And I was like,
You're
good. I was like, you do have to ride her. And I was like, good, it's not just me. It's not just me.
my first pony was like the devil incarnate. Like, he was horrible. And he was the last. We have an instructor in the pony club who her only advice to young coaches is do not be tempted to get on someoe's pony. And it's because of my pony. He dumped me twice in a lesson, and she was like, oh, don't be silly, I'll get on. And he dumped her twice as well.
Yes, that's the thing you have to be careful of. So back to our interview and our questions.
Let's focus, right, okay.
Do you think that talent is real, and how much of a bearing do you think it has on someone's success?
Yeah, I think so. Probably more so with the horse than with the rider.
Yeah,
I think at the end of the day, like especially in endurance, at the end of the day, if they haven't got something about them, they are not going to go out and do 80 or 120k or 160k in a day. They're just not.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but I mean, there obviously a huge amount of it is training and attitude and all the work that goes into them. But there is a lot, I think, about talent, and because Ebba was hugely different to Rocky, she was incredibly talented, but she didn't quite have enough of a level head. We actually got disqualified from the ride once because we got disqualified for her bad behaviour in the vetting. I told the vet that he'd have to be gentle with her and to watch her back end, and she ended up knocking him over and then rearing at him as he was trying to stand up again.
Nice.
This happened to me. This sort of thing happened to me. My pony was amazing to vet at endurance rides, but our vet at home was Danish, and he hated the vet. And we got a German male vet at the vetting, and he was absolutely fine until he spoke, and then my horse was like, and he would not stand still. He was like, you followed me, and then he had to get his work experience student to take my horse's heart rate, and then he was like, fine, I'll stand.
You're acceptable.
The English one.
It was so bad, and that was all we put it down to, because every other endurance ride he was absolutely fine. Sorry, back to your story of your ponies.
Yeah, so she had the talent, but she didn't have enough of a level head for the vettings particularly. So I know there's a lot of the bigger races I'd go to now with Rocky, where Ebba, we stand there and we'd be like, she'd do the distance, but she would never cope with this. Like quite a lot of them now we vet in like under marquee tents and stuff.
Like
and
misting
she
tents?
wouldn't.
No, like
misting
tents. Do you not have those? No, we have them at the end. At the end of like a big cross country course, you have a tent that's got fans and.
Oh, okay.
Because we had them at Hartbury as well. Not just Olympics. With like they have like fans and mist, like water mist.
No, it's nothing
generators.
that, Jess. It's literally just a tent.
Okay.
But Ebba wouldn't have coped with that at all, and she didn't like anyone taking her heart rate, and so she got to 2-star level, but she'd have never done racing very well because you couldn't have rushed her into the vet and rushed her through to get your speed down. Whereas Rocky, I mean, obviously Rocky, I didn't start from scratch, so I don't know how his last owner got him so calm with the vet. But he literally, the second he walks into the vet, he switches off and his head comes down and he stands perfectly still while everyone's taking his pulse rate. It's so much so that quite often he falls asleep before you have to do the trot up, and then you can't get him to trot up. Come on! But
remember your sound. Your sound.
So you say it was a combination of your talent and your attitude?
I think you've probably got to have a certain level of talent, but they. Oh my god. Yeah, but
continue.
I think that a huge amount of it is the training that goes into it. I think.
What's one bit of kit you couldn't live without?
Probably my stethoscope.
Really?
Yeah, that's really sad.
All the things I thought you were going to say, that was not one.
Because we have an electronic heart rate monitor, which is really good when it works. Because obviously you can come in and just, as he's having someone take his saddle off, someone can be taking his heart rate. But that's stopped working quite a few times, or quite a few times I've been riding with someone and they've needed to take their horse's heart rate as well. So at the end of the day, I always want my stethoscope there. Just because you sort of know you can rely on that. And
Do Do you think that's helped, having to be able to take a horse's heart rate with your vet?
Yeah, definitely. It's quite similar to taking a cow's as well.
Because I know some vets would struggle to begin with to actually find it, and I know when I tried to do it with stethoscope, I was like, it's got to be in here somewhere alive.
Yeah, I swear. No, it's definitely helped, because I've done a sort of a mixture of doing it at uni and then at endurance rides as well.
Is there anything that you take from from studying vet med into endurance? Like, is there anything you've learned you've been like, oh my god, that's such a good idea?
Quite a bit. Sort of, we had a few nutrition lectures last year, and that made a lot of sense. Sort of why horses need fibre and everything. But I'd already done, when I was at secondary school, I did my EPQ on gastric ulcers because Ebba suffered from them. So I knew quite a lot of the nutrition stuff we got taught last year. Sort of all about fibre and why they need it, and what happens if you don't have it, which you don't want.
So for our final question, if you could, what's your advice to anyone that wants to start endurance or get involved?
Genuinely, just give it a go. I think there's so many equestrian disciplines that are really hard to get into, and sort of, I know I do the occasional dressage test with Rocky, and I turn up and I look ridiculous when I get there. Because in my head, he's quite a big horse. I mean, he's a 15-2 Arab, which is about as big as Arabs get. Yeah. But in my head, he's quite big. Because you go to endurance rides and it's like, yeah, he's a big horse. He's the big one. And then you get to West Wilts Equestrian Centre on dressage day, and he's tiny. Everything else is like prancing around us, and he looks ridiculous.
We went to West Wilts before the season started with like a 4-star, well now 5-star horse and a couple of 3-star horses, and like we turned up unplatted, the riders weren't in jackets, and we literally we just dragged them like out of a box into the lorry, and like they went, and I
can do it.
Or like I was watching all these people who like obviously like made an effort, platted their horse, and I just felt so bad. You know, when you're like, I promise we're not that big. Please don't look at who it is. Please don't match a name to who this is.
No, I think probably just give it a go. Like there's, like I say, I've seen a Suffolk Punch at endurance rides. He's so awesome.
Cool. So you definitely don't need an Arab.
You don't need an Arab, no. Like there's a lot of basically anything out there.
And are
my friend Katie is qualified to go to the Young Rider Championships this year, which I'm hopefully going to be able to go and crew her for.
Oh, that'd be so cool.
Trip to Italy.
Welcome.
Join it. And one of the horses that she's got qualified for it is Welsh Cross Arab, but you wouldn't see much of the Arab in it. Like she's she's a solid horse. But yeah, like it's just with different breeds of horses, it's just knowing how to manage them. Like we used to know with the Appaloosa that had buckets of water chucked on it, while Ebba was stood there with sort of one sponge, and that'd do, and then 3 blankets put on her. But anything can do it.
It might sound like a really stupid question, but why go for smaller horses in endurance? Like, why not have like a big 16-3 thoroughbred?
I think you can really. I think it's just because it tends to be Arabs, and Arabs don't come that big.
Yeah.
But
okay. Go for
I think. I mean, bigger horses cover the ground.
That's what I was thinking. It's like but at the same time, stride as opposed to 4.
Yeah, there's another young rider who I think her pony's full cool dude, and he's really lush. Good name. He did a 1-star a few weeks ago at the same event I did a 2-star at, and I think he's 12-2. So he went around and did 80k, like international 80k race, and like.
My pony was.
He obviously takes a lot of strides.
Yeah,
he still does it.
Takes a lot.
Yeah, my pony was in his passport was 14-1, but I'm pretty sure he's more like 13-3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Classic. I was talking the other day to the physio about how heights are not real. Like heights on passports,
no,
they're not real.
Like life height certificates, like
they're not
with
real.
shoes or without shoes.
we had a pony that had a life height for 14.2, and God, how they made it 14.2. They must have like cut its feet back to nothing and like clipped its mane and like exhausted it before it was measured. Because we got it and like, okay, we did some things as 14.2, and then when we sold it, we remeasured it and it was about 15.2. It was massive.
When I was younger, I moved off of a 12.2 onto a 12.2, but because I was too big for the first 12.2. Of course, that was a big size difference.
Horse logic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.
What are your social media pages so people can follow you and learn all about your horses?
Yeah, I've like my Instagram account is just me, but it tends to be most horsey things. But that's Ella.Bunting because Bunting wasn't cool enough when I made my Instagram account.
Of course.
And my endurance page on Facebook is just Ella Bunting Endurance.
Okay, so everyone go and like
Flows
that.
off the tongue.
Yeah.
For get an inside view of top endurance events.
Yeah, and what happens. And when she goes to Young Riders in Italy, you'll see what happens.
Fingers crossed.
Okay, thanks everyone for listening. If you can like us on Facebook as well and follow us on Instagram and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, because then more people can learn about all the different things we talk about. Thanks for listening. Right, bye.